Welcome to Just the Myth. Sometimes you're not in the right headspace to listen to a guy talk about stretching the muscle and tearing the fascia, but you still want to listen to that guy mispronounce mythological names despite his best well-researched efforts. This is for you. On Just the Myth, I'll cast aside the fitness portion of Fitness and Folklore entirely. There's just some myths out there that I love and believe should be shared that don't quite fit in with the nature of mythic muscle. You and I will explore those tales in this series, along with maybe just a tinge of history. Just the Myth's sibling, Just the Fit, is probably more your speed if you're looking for something actionable. Something you can directly apply in the gym for your own edifice. Of course, if you need a bit of both, Mythic Muscle's still there waiting for you. And hey, if you're not interested in the myth and you're just here to support me, you've got a very, very special place in my heart. Thank you. If you want to support me further, you can find me on nearly every social media platform. Patreon, my preferred platform, TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, YouTube, Podbean, Spotify, Patreon, and Instagram by searching for Mythic Muscle Podcast and looking for the helmet crossed with a barbell and the microphone. Yesterday evening, I was taking a walk to pick up dinner. For the entirety of the day, the wind had been blowing and the rainfall was ceaseless. The trees were dead and blackened by their waterlogged bark, all offset by the intense dark silvery blue of brewing storm clouds, the smell of petrichor rife and total. There was a moment of pointed silence. I stopped, looked around, there were no cars, no people, even the wind relaxed. And in some great moment of serendipity, a singular crow's voice broke the silence, and the earth continued to spin. Atop one of those blackened trees, leafless and spindly, was a beautiful jet-black crow, staring to the east, occasionally preening itself, before it took off, disappearing above the tree line. I didn't even allow myself a heartbeat before I said out loud, "The Morrigan," and immediately the topic of this episode cemented itself. But if you're going to cover the Morrigan, there's another figure intrinsically tied to her story, the great hound of Ulster, Tuatha De Danann's incarnate warrior god, Cuchulainn. He'll be getting his own episode later this week, but he'll certainly be making a guest appearance in this one. The Morrigan is the eminent figure from Irish mythology. Entire character archetypes are based off of her. The seductive dark witch is one-for-one the Morrigan's detail. Now, to inspire characters in contemporary text is one thing, but to be so legendary you inspire other myths? That's levels of badassery one can only dream of. Morgan Le Fay, Arthurian legend's present seductive dark witch, is widely accepted to be a riff of the Morrigan. Similar names, similar duties, similar supernatural capabilities. It doesn't take a rocket surgeon to suggest they might be correlated somehow. We'll talk more on Morgana when we get around to Arthurian folklore, but much of what's written here, at least description-wise, will be repeated. So far, I've talked about other myths just as much as I've talked about the titular figure, and this is entirely emblematic of the Morrigan herself. The Morrigan's primary domain is fate. She plays puppet master to all things living and dead. Wrapped around her dainty, pale fingers are the threads that bind all things together. At will, she chooses what events unfold, and what events do not. She prophesizes these events and recites them in cryptic poems, such as this one after the Second Battle of Moichuda. Peace to the sky, sky to the earth. Earth beneath sky, strength in each man, a cup full of honey, honor enough, summer and winter, spear supported by shield, shields supported by forts, forts fierce and eager for battle, fleece from sheep, woods full of stags, forever destructions have departed. Fruit on trees, a branch drooping down, drooping from growth, wealth for a son very learned, neck of a bull and yoke, a bull from a song, knots in woods, wood for a fire, fire as wanted, walls new and bright. Salmon their victory, the boyne their hostel, hostel of excellent size. New growth after spring, in autumn horses increase, the land held secure. Land recounted with excellence of word. Be might to the eternal much excellent woods, peace as high as the sky, be 9 times eternal. This poem is a blessing, a portent of prosperity to come, but then she follows it up with another one. I shall not see a world that will be dear to me. Summer without flowers, cows without milk, women without conscience, men not brave, conquests without a king, woods without fruit, fishless seas, bad judgments by old men, false precedents of the lawgivers, every man a betrayer, each son a robber, the son will enter the father's bed, the father also in the bed of the son, a brother becomes his own brother-in-law, none will look for a woman outside his own house, oh, evil time, son will deceive father, daughter will deceive mother. Yeah, not a good look. This dual nature of the Morrigan is intentional, for while the Morrigan lords over fate, she also holds dominion over the cycle of life. The birth, decay, death, and growth are all things hers. She's a shapeshifter, able to appear as animals or people or groups of people. She uses these powers to deceive, to plant seeds of doubt, or to force people to do her bidding. Sometimes, though, she uses these powers to aid or protect, and in some cases, assist in fertility. I'll let you stew on that one on your own for a bit. The Morrigan is revered and feared. One hopes to never upset her, insult her, or otherwise invoke her ire, but to respect her and her capabilities. There's an inherent threat in disrespecting or upsetting nature. Go too far, forest too much, graze more grass than you need, and the Morrigan might set your house ablaze, spread plagues upon your livestock, or realign an opponent's spear in combat, forcing it to strike true where it should have missed. Due to her ability to impact the battlefield, the people of Ireland revere her as a war goddess first and foremost. Warriors would look overhead for crows, ravens, or other dark birds, omens that the Morrigan is with them. Her perceived presence would embolden the warriors and discourage their opponents. So whether or not these warriors were truly blessed by the Morrigan, or if their belief drove them to fight at greater heights, who's to say? The story in which scholars derive most of their reference is the story of Cath Maichuda, or the Battle of Moichuda. Two kings walk the bountiful lands of Ida. The first king of the Tuatha Dé Danann, Nuada Ergetlam, and the Fomorian king Baelor. The Fomorians come from beneath the earth, while the Tuatha Dé Danann are divine beings from beyond the earth. The two kings battle for the lands of the Ida. The Tuatha Dé Danann seek to toil the land, to sup from it, but to invigorate it, while the Fomorians seek to dominate it and corrupt it. Under Baelor, the Fomorian king Indech gathers his forces. Under Nuada, the war god Lu amasses his men. The Morrigan in her dark splendor arrives at Lu's court and begins to craft a plan to destroy the Fomorians by their roots. She tells Lu that his strength will overpower the Fomorians despite their stature as giants, that even though they're beings of monstrous might, the Tuath Dé have the blessing of nature at their backs. She tells them that mercy is of no consequence in the coming battle, to drive the Fomorians to their knees and to cut from them their earthly ties. The Morian leaves Lu and seeks her lover, the Dagda, equally mysterious and equally mystical as the Morrigan. While the Dark Witch oversees fate and the cycle of life, the Dagda structures the very land itself, holding power over nature, the seasons, the climate, all the while equaling the Morrigan in dominion over life and death. The two meet during Samhain. They sleep together, and there in bed they speak of the coming battle. The Morrigan tells Dagda of the battle and where it will be fought. Without asking, but commanding, she tells him to raise his land, giving the combatants equal footing. He grimaces, but does so, asking in return what she will do to assist the Tuath Dé. She states she will rip from the Fomorian king Indech his kidneys, and present his blood to Lu. As Lu gathers his forces in this newly raised strip of land between the river Unshin, the Morrigan shows beside the Dagda, with her hands blooded by Fomorian blood, having held true to her word. Lu thanks her and asks the Dagda what strength he brings, and then the Dagda delivers the coldest line in all of history. "The bones under my club will be as many as hailstones under feet of herds of horses." Lu looks at the Dagda and says, "Whoa, sick, probably," and from there the battle begins. The Fomorians press the advantage for most of the fight, battling back the Tuath Dé, and when all hope seems lost, the Morrigan appears and chants the following poem. "Kings arise to the battle, cheeks are seized, faces are declared. Flesh is decimated, faces are flayed. Bounties of battle are seized, ramparts are sought. Feasts are given, battles are observed, poems are recited. Druids are celebrated, circuits are made, bodies are recorded. Medals cut, teeth mark, neck break, 100 cuts blossom. Screams are heard, battalions are broken, hosts give battle. Ships are steered, weapons protect, noses are severed. I see all who are born in the blood-zealous vigorous battle, raging on the raven battlefield with blade scabbards. They attempt our defeat over our own great torrents, against your attack on the full complement of Fumoir. In the mossy margins the helpful raven drives strife to our hardy hosts mustered. we prepare ourselves to destroy. To me, the full-blooded exploits are like shaking to and fro of hound kills. Swiftly, the Morrigan's words turn to reality, as it's clear she's meddling with fate through the recitation of the poem. The tides turn and the Tuatha De Danann win the day, with Lu slaughtering the Fomorian king Baelor. There ends the Cathmai Chuda, but another story displays the Morrigan's personality in much greater avail. Among the forests of the Aida lived a queen named Maeve. She had a husband, King Ailil Mac Mata, whom she had a rivalry with. Both were intensely wealthy, but the King Ailil Mac Mata owned a possession that Maeve didn't. The only thing separating the two of them was a beautiful red-furred bull. Maeve decided that she needed to add a red-furred bull to her collection, but it couldn't be just any red-furred bull. It had to be the most massive, most regal, and most majestic in all of the Aida. She traveled far and wide, pillaging and raiding along the way before stumbling upon a cattlemaster of Ulster, who just happened to own the bull she needed. She offered him its weight in gold. He refused. She offered twice its weight in gold. He refused. And then her final offer, twice its weight in gold and a huge swath of land that the cattlemaster could use to raise more cattle and till. He refused as well, as this bull was more valuable to him than any material wealth. Maeve decided she would take the bull by force then, and gathered armies from all across Ireland to raid the cattlemaster's farm. As the armies under Maeve made their way toward Ulster, they were stopped at a river ford just before a bridge. One teenager, a boy nearing manhood, stopped them, calling out that in order to cross, they must best him in single combat. Maeve laughed and indulged the boy, sending her largest soldier against him, expecting the teenager to be ground to a pulp. The massively muscular warrior strode toward the boy and began to brutally send blows from his club towards the boy's head. But this was no ordinary young man. This was Cuchulainn, a warrior descendant of the Tuatha De Danann, believed to be the very incarnation of the aforementioned Lu. The warrior fell with a single stroke of Cuchulainn's sword. Maeve's interest was piqued, and so she sent her most agile warrior against Cuchulainn, and the warrior fell even faster. She continued sending heroes until her rage took hold of her. She shouted to her men that whoever kills the boy earns her only daughter's hand in marriage. The combat had drawn the attention of a set of strikingly beautiful violet eyes, and from the tree line she sat watching, infatuated with the young Cuchulainn's prowess and proclivity for violence. So the Morrigan saunters up to the tiring Cuchulainn, who by this point had killed over 1,000 men in single combat. She tells him that she'll offer her hand in combat to help shoulder the burden, and when it's all over, he would have her love. But Cuchulainn, being a very based teenager, declines her advances and continues slaughtering. The Morrigan isn't used to being denied, and as such, she declares Cuchulainn's life forfeit. She would from there forward make him suffer through the rest of the combat. In his next duel, the Morrigan shapeshifts into an eel and jumps from the river in an attempt to trip Cuchulainn, but Cuchulainn dodges her and hurls a rock at her, breaking her ribs. She then shapeshifts into a wolf, hurting the cattle he's defending, and riling them into a stampede against him. Cuchulainn dodges the stampede and hurls another rock at the Morrigan in her wolf form, this time blinding her in one of her eyes. Enraged, the Morrigan takes the form of a bull and leads the stampede by the head. Cuchulainn once again evades the attack and using his sling once again hurls a rock at the Morrigan, breaking one of her legs. Forced to retreat, the Morrigan vanishes into the forest and licks her wounds. Cuchulainn continues his defense and eventually Maeve retreats. The triumphant young lad returns to his home, but on the way finds an old woman milking a cow, aged, half-blind, limping, and clearly in pain. He approaches her and asks for some milk. In return, he'll heal her wounds and bless her to health. She accepts, and with each drink, the woman begins to regain her strength. Her wounds close, her legs heal, her cloudy eye clears. Suddenly, as the smile creeps across her face, Cuchulainn realizes what he's done, and states he regrets blessing her, for she brought upon herself the violence he had wrought unto her. She laughs, and Cuchulainn returns home to continue his adventures in badassery. Years later, an older, grizzled veteran Cuchulainn, jacked, cranked, and otherwise rippling with muscle, stumbles across the Morrigan once again, this time taking her form of 3 women. The 3 women share with Cuchulainn a vision. One of the 3 washes his bloodied armor in the river, an omen of his coming death. Cuchulainn understands that the Morrigan's prophecies are not prophecies but the reality of what's to come. He nods and sets off for battle. Later, Cucullin suffers a mortal wound and looks upon his own armor. It's blood-soaked, just as he had seen in the vision. He walks to the nearest standing stone and doffs the armor. His own entrails spill from his stomach. He ties them to the standing stone and looks out upon the battlefield, noting the river in the distance. He will die on his feet, his entrails keeping him propped against the stone. His enemies dared not to go near him, as even in this state Cucullin was a force to be reckoned with. It wasn't until a black crow perched itself upon his shoulder that his enemies believed him to be dead. The Morrigan, satisfied with her vengeance, pecked at his cheek, kissing him with her crow's beak. To cross the Morrigan and insult her is to accept one's own death. It's been a while since you've touched pen to page. The muse is gone, and your recovery has been slow. Two things you utterly despise. After that business with the bar guest, you're lucky to even be alive. You owe it to the fire brigade, who witnessed your fall off the dock, for pulling you back from the brink of death. The doctors stated that had you been under any longer, you wouldn't have made it. Fate must have been on your side. You ponder the reasoning as to why, but it doesn't seem to matter much to you. You wouldn't call it a benefit or anything, but the most interesting thing to come from this is the visions. Your doctor would call it hallucinations acquired from oxygen loss to the brain, something cerebral hypoxia. Whatever it is, it's quite interesting. The first one that came to you, you were running through the forest, spear in hand, deep in the midst of some battle. It was blurry, like an out-of-body experience. The most recent one, though, has stirred your desire to write a bit. But more than anything, it's the reason you've decided to trek back out to the woods, against your doctor's orders. As you were walking to the hospital's latrine, your head began to spin. You opened the door and saw a great grove of trees. You passed the threshold and saw all manners of silver stag and massive hounds, forest creatures the like of which rival the greatest of myths. A man, imposing in his height and physical stature, with a great red and gray beard, hooded, cloaked in all manner of furs, carrying a great wooden club, beckoned you forward. You felt pulled to him, as if the ground below you was moving, not your feet. When you stood next to him, you realized just how tall he must have been, 10, 12 feet maybe? His voice broke the silence of the grove, and it was as if his vocal cords were tectonic plates. His words cracked the earth and matched the booming thunder above. Despite the fear he should induce, his form felt fatherly and nurturing. His words calmed your senses. He said, as best you can recall, "Below the nest of crows rests the journal of prose. Amidst the twigs and feather you'll find your threaded leather. They roost at the base of that which would have been your nearest in place. The choice you must make. The bird's treasure, is it yours to take?" He opened his palm, and within it was a forest. As you peered deeper, you saw the very crow's nest he had described, nestled into the small wedge between two charred stones, your lost journal acting as the floor of the nest. While you went on this spiritual journey within your mind, the doctors said you simply opened the door and stared at the toilet for a good 8 minutes, before promptly passing out, soiling yourself in the process. Why they didn't act sooner, given your diagnosis, you're not positive. You follow a similar path through the countryside as you had before. The coast on your left, cold but quiet tonight. The tree line to the right swaying in the night breeze, the fence burnt and crumbling. You feel the fear grip your chest again, as these woods were the start of the most painful night of your life. Yet that man, whatever he was, it's as if he's with you. In fact, due to the hallucinations, he's right over there, gently stroking the head of a deer. You feel something bite at the leather of your boots, and quickly you lift your leg. As you look down, there's a small black hare looking up at you incredulously. It bounds away from you, but stops just a ways off, staring back toward you. Is it beckoning you? To hell with it, you say out loud, and begin following the hare as it takes you deeper and deeper into the woods. The deeper you get, you swear you can hear snarling. Snarling you know all too well, as it's haunted your dreams each night. It's the hallucinations, you tell yourself. It's just the hallucinations. The hare stops at a section of deep brambles, and as you come up to it, it bounds away faster than you can track it. Ahead of you, illuminated by moonlight, is an open grove, gray-green grass, a small stream, and a score of charred trees surrounding. It's identical to that of the vision. That snarling grows, you hear it behind you. You dare not turn around, and so you begin striding forward into the clearing. You hear the footsteps, you feel the breath behind you, but you press on, even if it takes you. Your curiosity of the vision is too great. You come upon the stones you saw, and sure enough, at the bottom of the wedge, there's a small nest of twigs, feathers, and brambles. Inside is a small baby crow with what looks to be a broken wing. You see your journal at the bottom, the embossed leather, the strap. Your mind is telling you to grab it and run, but you'll need to break the nest in order to untangle the book. Breaking the nest forces the crow to find cover elsewhere, and without its gift of flight, it's nothing but easy prey. The crow looks to you. You hear the pounding of great hellish paws behind you. Time is running short. You still might make it out if you just grab the book and go. The poem rings through your head. It's all becoming too much as your senses are overwhelmed. You face this hound once. It tried to kill you. If you move this nest, it'll take the crow instead. You make your decision and spin on your heel, and just in front of you is that very same demon that sent you to the bottom of the bay. Flaming eyes, furious and malevolent, too many teeth and an overgrown snout. The massive inky black form of the bar guest steps toward you. Fear takes you as the bar guest inches closer, just like before. But it stops. You notice its eyes aren't peering into yours like they had before. Instead, they're fixated at your feet. And standing there in all of its insignificance is that small black hair that led you here. The bunny jumps forward slightly toward the bar guest, and the bar guest growls a threat. It jumps forward again, and the bar guest ducks its head low and begins stepping backward. It jumps forward again. This time the bar guest takes off into the woods, its devil's tail between its legs. Astonished, you look at the black hair. It looks back at you. Your vision starts to fade. As in your condition, this amount of stress is enough to do you in. You awake in the hospital bed, another one of these visions. Except a voice clear as day, in an almost sultry tone says, "You had no vision. What you saw was true. You made your decision. The crow lives because of you." You look to see a woman sat in one of these visitors' chairs. She's beautiful in a way that strikes you as dangerous. She stands, and with a lilting step walks toward you. The bird's treasure, it wasn't yours to measure, while the loss of your scribe brings you strife. What's that to the loss of one's life? She rests her hand on your cheek, and it feels as if your head clears somewhat. Your lungs fill with air, to the greatest extent they have since you drowned. Your world suddenly makes more sense again. She begins to walk away. Most wouldn't weigh their life's work low against the life of the smallest so. In return, your head's been made whole again, a deserved gift from the Morrigan. The Morrigan is without a doubt the most influential figure in Celtic folklore. Not only is her presence felt within every Celtic myth, but in real life you can find her in nearly every fantasy story. Yennefer from The Witcher is very clearly inspired by the Morrigan. She's a playable character in the video game Smite, a character showing up from time to time in Marvel Comics, and she's in a plethora of TV shows and movies. The archetype spawned from her is often used as a foil. Think Maleficent from the likes of Disney, or basically any sexy dark witch who does bad things for good reasons. That's the Morrigan. Even if she's not directly mentioned or intentionally referenced, somewhere along the line, a root is stemmed from her. And the origin of this episode came from a subconscious association of mine from a damned bird on a tree. That's power. All that aside, be kind to nature. It's in your best interest not to piss off the sexy witch lady. Unless you're into that, in which case... With that, I have been your host, Benjamin Cloud. This has been Just the Myth on the Mythic Muscle Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day, a phenomenal lift, or if it's a rest day, go research Celtic mythology. There's so many names and places, and everything is referential of some real-life location or occurrence. Take care, folks. Please consider supporting me on Patreon. For only $3 a month, you get Discord access, and you buy me a protein bar. $5 a month gets you Discord access with special colors and emotes, blooper reels, a shout out for me, and transcripts of each episode. $10 a month gets you all of that noise, a vote in our monthly poll, a personalized 10-second clip of whatever you want me to say, and every dollar spent at that tier goes right back into the podcast so that I might bring you a better listening experience. Follow my socials. You can find me on pretty much every platform by searching for Mythic Muscle Podcast and looking for the helmet crossed with the barbell and the microphone. If you made it this far, you're my favorite type of human. I hope you have a wonderful day, a fantastic lift, or if it's a rest day, you get some quality relaxation time. Thank you.